So I know that, that at various times I would have managed all the difficult moments that Phumla and others have spoken about by reflecting with others. Every decision that you make as a leader, when you know it's going to impact many lives, and in our case in the university, when you know a policy decision or a particular decision you're going to take is going to impact a person or many people, you reflect about it a lot and you reflect deeply. I think often in a way men do not, I would say. And what I mean by that, not that they wouldn't talk about there are always exceptions, but not that they would, but women would talk deeply about it in a personal way. They would talk about the heart in a way I would say men do not, because they process it primarily in terms of the mind rather than the heart. Or that has certainly been my experience of working in leadership teams. But the main point I want to make is that I think women think a lot about the decisions they make, which make the decisions they make hard for them to make, and often they have to face they face a bigger personal challenge around that. Because you also have to confront all the critique that is normal or is routine or expected in any leadership process. So yes, I think being a woman in leadership is I think it's not surprising that not many women often put themselves forward for leadership. Because of precisely the kinds of challenges that we've spoken about. But the one point I would make in concluding is that what is really wonderful about being in South Africa is that as a woman, despite all the gender violence and that which in some ways I would see as being one of the outcomes of precisely the democratizing of society and of relationships, and the fact that women do have the opportunity to be in leadership. So I appreciate very much where we are as a country and as a society that such opportunities are possible despite the many challenges of that. Thank you.
Whilst roving mics are being organized, I think we should all write a petition of gratitude to Professor Vithal's sons for not excluding her, because actually low performance in university leads to exclusions. For not excluding her when she got 3 out of 10. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the panelists for their inspirational probes. But for now, I think we want to hear your take on these. Brief comments, brief questions would be appreciated. Let's see the show of hands so that the roving mic can come towards you.
I congratulate wonderful ladies on their achievements. You make us all proud. And you make us feel that, yes, there's always a tomorrow and there's always another challenge. The challenge that concerns me is the fact that we are talking about communities. We know what communities are, and that seems to be safe. But what about the people outside the communities? Whenever I pass the people who are hungry at the robots, it concerns me very much. And I am at the moment working under Professor Thomaselli's communications and media, as well as splitting it into classics. Now, why classics? Because classical history teaches us all about the history of society. And indeed, when reading that, how women have suffered, not just the last 10 years, but for the last thousands of years. Now, when it comes to a woman, she is responsible, And she feels always about feeding the child, feeding the person, feeding whatever she can feed. And for this reason, I brought along people who are in environment, and I ask UKZN to see what we can do to feed the people outside community standing on robots.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd actually like to thank our panelists. And I think it is actually refreshing to be sitting here and being a woman as well in leadership and having to hear the journeys that they've actually walked and what has actually shaped them to be the women that they are. Actually, from this discussion, I'm going to write my story for my daughter to be able to realize what is actually the journey that we have experienced as women. I've actually got, like, I think a question, a short question. How do you use being female, your feminine skills, in a male-dominated environment? Often you would find that when you're working in a male-dominated environment, you would end up being also partially hard-hearted sometimes, in some other instances. And I think maybe Pumla, since you've also worked in a process environment, you would know how men actually think and some of the decisions that would be made as well. But how do you use as well being feminine in a male-dominated environment without it being seen in an inverted commas as well? So that is my question. Thank you.
If my response will be on exactly my experience. And look, the experience that I had in COSATU, in a trade union environment, is that you come in there are already male that are well known, that have been there before you, and already you are, that's the first challenge. But personally, you refuse to change who you are and allow that environment to then describe yourself. But you bring in your femininity into it. And it works in a different way because it changes the thinking of these men and even women who have been there but decided to become silent and quiet because you don't want to be criticized. And you come in, you say, this is who I am, this is what I represent as a woman. And because when you get into that environment, there are discussions that are on principle basis. It doesn't matter the gender that one comes with, but it's on issues of principle. And you debate and you put your opinions through, not because I'm a female, because I refused to be seen in that way. I want you to look at me as a leader, because we're all leaders. Leave the gender when we're discussing issues of principle. But one thing that I always make sure that it will never happen is for me to get that soft part and cry. You see, there's always a temptation when men, because men sometimes leave the issues and deal with you, become personal. You see, when they become personal, they intimidate. You say, can I go and relieve myself, that part that, you want to go to the loo and pass water. But that's when you want to go and compose yourself and come back and say, I'm going to make sure that we are not detoured on the issues. Because when men, at most, they want to avoid issues, they want to bring issues of being a woman and a man and becoming hard at your personalities so that you then, you succumb to the pressure. And I say that's what always, in the challenges that I've come through, I always say I am a leader. That's the first thing. I was elected in a Congress democratically with all of you. There was no Congress that was made for me outside the Congress that elected the men. So I expect the same respect because I give the same respect. And I think it's a matter of being principled as a leader, Don't expect yourself to be treated specially, because you are not going to treat anyone special. It is on the matters of principle. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm Baleka Mbete, an ANC Youth League branch secretary in Howard College, also a Central SRC member. First and foremost, I'd like to commend our panelists for such an informative and inspiring presentation of your journeys in leadership. I think as a young woman, I have been inspired, and I agree with all the sentiments that you have shared, especially on the principle such as being disciplined as a woman, working hard in ensuring that and of course knowing our story as women. I think mine is basically a comment. I think as women, we are capable. Some people may say that the gender quota is assisting us 50-50. It doesn't assist us. Indeed, I agree that we deserve that 50-50, because the reality is, if there was no 50-50, women were not going to be represented in structures, because we know how males operate in such a patriarchal society. Again, I think as women, as we know that in the University of KwaZulu-Natal, we have more women who graduated than males. And of course, when it comes to issues of SRC, for example, in the SRC, in the 60 SRC that we have only 20% which are female, which is a problem on its own. Yet, when you check how many people have voted, you see that it's actually the women who have voted, but when it comes to positions, they are on the periphery. I think we need more forums such as this, whereby we will hear such experienced women talking about their journeys rather than us Googling it. I think we applaud this session. Again, I think that we must also include psychologists or perhaps counselors and have workshops whereby we have counselors and psychologists, because I think as women we are very capable, but the problem is we have confidence issues, because when you go to AGMs, you go to your congresses, you'll be told, but no, you are going to be the deputy chair. You'll be told by someone, why can't I be the chairperson? You know, as women, we are undermined. I think that it's high time that we take a stance and we become more confident, because we are really capable. Thanks.
On that note, I actually want to thank the last speaker. I also want to tell you that she was going to be on the panel with us. She's been part of our committee, but she thought that we have such esteemed women leaders that she would listen and learn. And I think that was a good decision, and it was a feminist decision. So thanks very much.
My name is Pamandla Mzobochi. I'd like to just thank you for just presenting your stories to us. Very encouraging. I'm coming from the Black Management Forum, and when I look at organizations such as the Black Management Forum, I see how intentions are, people declare things intentionally, so such as forming structures as these. How can we as women form structures that will intentionally say we want to develop other women? We want women not only to have forums, but women to say, but this is how you do things. Because unfortunately, although we may have capacity, but issues of the past are still existing. People still have those stereotypes about women, although they cannot be seen, but they exist, they are ghost things. So if I'm coming in the boardroom, people expect me to break down because I'm a woman. So how can we have structures that can enforce mentorship, that can enable women to be accountable to other young women in terms of development? Yeah.
I wanted to take the question because I also come from the Black Management Forum. And in my early years in the corporate world, I was a very active member of the Black Management Forum, and I continue to support it. I wanted to take it because I think that what you describe is what we don't do enough of in this very university. I don't think that we as women support each other enough in this university. You know, universities are peer groups. They're based on acceptance among academics, acceptance amongst various networks, and I just don't think that what we do is adequate within this university to form networks of support, to form structures of support, to actually pull ourselves together to push each other forward. And this is a challenge that I would like to put out, because my observation has been that in as much as we all get on well as women leaders in the various leadership portfolios that we occupy, but we don't get together and look at how we support each other, how we give each other strength, and how we push each other forward so that we can, as women, make a more meaningful contribution to this institution. So I couldn't agree with you more, because the whole philosophy of the Black Management Forum is to stand up and state your intention, which is to build Black managerial potential. Why can't we stand up and state our intention and say we want to develop women academics, we want to make sure that they participate more in the academic excellence, the knowledge production, etc.
I'll take the last and final question.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Andy Jogota. I just want to ask to the women, how do you balance or execute your cultural obligations without conflicting with your leadership roles? Because sometimes you find that once you're exposed to the public roles, some of the things that happen in the private space, they don't make sense. So how do you fulfill your private obligations culturally that sometimes don't really make sense in terms of your academic convictions? How do you balance those things? I don't know if it makes sense.
You do make sense. Any question that you're posing, it obviously makes sense. Very often women ask questions, say, I'm not sure you're not making sense, and men don't do that. So your question is valid, and I'm not sure. I'll let Professor Vital take it.
I would say that very early on, I used to feel like I'm inhabiting two worlds. So there was a world in which there's traditional societies of wherever in the world generally are based on patriarchy. And so the roles of women are prescribed in sort of very clear ways. So in cultural practices, you're expected to behave in a particular way. And then from your educational or work environment, you have a different way. So certainly, if I just could give you an example, if you were the director or the dean of a unit, you come in and you're expected to exercise leadership and everyone listens to you and so on. And then when you're involved in some cultural practice, you have to be subservient and do as you are told and many of those things. So I don't think there's a neat answer. But I think both influence each other, and that cultural practices are, also change over time. And so sometimes, I would say for myself, there are some practices that I then would find enough courage to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in that, because and you choose them. So I'm not saying that you'd say blanket and in all things. So I know there's some things in which I would not win that argument in the family. But that I think that it's an evolutionary process, and that as women, I think we change those practices and we influence them and we get influenced by them. So that over time, for example, women never, there was a time when women always took on the names of their marriage partners. Now you can have a choice about that. But there was a time when it was, what? It would just not be accepted. So I think you navigate those and you allow yourself to transform some of them as you participate in them.
Thank you. I know that this morning was a space where people shared experiences that I think very often are not shared. And it was our intention to recreate the conversation. There's also been challenges put out from the participants as well as the leaders to UKZN in terms of women and leadership. And it is correct that women in leadership and also women emerging leaders, we don't talk enough and support each other. I come from a background which is a very strong feminist activist background, and I know that I am where I am because of other women, and particularly black feminist women, locally and internationally. And the Chair of Council has raised an important point that I think in Humanities and the university we would take up, to look at how women, emerging leaders and leaders, can start supporting or supporting each other in a way that's possibly more, I don't want to say more formalized, but we know that the space exists. Black Management Forum, for me, was also very important in my career. I think one of the first public spaces that I spoke at was the Black Management Forum in Cape Town. Although I'm from Port Elizabeth, and people keep on asking me, is all the PE people that I'm bringing here? I didn't bring them here because they're from PE. Professor Vita also matriculated in PE. She's from Port Elizabeth. The chair is also from the Eastern Cape. So there's no Cosa or Nostra, it just happens. And we also have many women leaders here from KZN and from the issue that resonates with me and what I want to pick up is the issue of resilience in women's leadership, but also, and I think a very important point that was raised is the issue of tensions. And I think for many of us, if I talk for myself, it's the issue of feminist tension. How do I continue being a feminist and a leader? And as Pumla was saying, it was hard when they had to make a decision about a particular woman. And I think all of us as women, feel particularly saddened when women go down, let me say, in terms of where they have been. Even for me, Dina Pule, we know the contribution that she has made. And we make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that as leaders we can continue to hold those spaces, because we also need to be accountable. And I think with support, we can assist we can assist. Also, in this audience, the committee has made a conscious decision that we bring student leadership to engage with us. Student leadership, men and women. And I thank you for being here. I want to not sum up the conversation, because I'm hoping that this kind of conversation can continue in some way at UKZN, and I can talk for the humanities, and I'd see what the College of Humanities with people across other colleges can do to start talking in terms of women and leadership. I can tell you that it is very cold and lonely in the corner office, even often when the view is very nice. And I think Professor Vital has one of the best views in the university, and I don't know how lonely and cold that is. Sometimes I run up to her with my high heels on and she'll come down. And yes, I'm wanting to now thank the panelists, and I'm going to ask, before I ask the person that's going to hand out our tokens of appreciation to the panelists, I also want to thank everybody that assisted us with this. I'm going to ask Dr. Gopal, who assisted and harassed the panelists, to come and hand out the thank you gifts. But I'm wanting to thank each and every panelist, and obviously starting with the research office, Professor Jumba in the background, Dr. Motsemi, who facilitated, she's from the research office, and that was my old home. I used to be the university dean for research. She facilitated a lot of what is happening here today, especially Ms. Baleka Mbete coming in. I'm wanting to thank Dr. Satoli, Dr. Gopal, Angeline Stevens, the woman on the SRC, corporate relations, because humanities, we're only appointing our corporate relations manager on the 1st of September. So the corporate relations, everybody in the Central Corporate Relations Office, my PA, the Nakatula in my office, Angeline and Vino in the support offices of the university, and just everybody, Tintin, who's in the background over here. I always say when I need no mistakes, I call on Tintin and his team, the security services, and everybody that made today happen. And obviously, Professor Mart, who's the acting director of the Center for Critical Race and Identity Theory, and all the gender studies students that she has in the background, including the male gender studies students who are, I see they're always wanting to come to my office, and they start with wanting to debate Marxism, and we can do that, and then I try to point them in the direction of issues around feminism and change in terms of, you know, leadership that reflects both women and men. I've been reading this book in the last few days by Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook. And it's fascinating, and it also just for me shows again that women, irrespective of location or class or race, there's a common thread in terms of the challenges that we have in terms of leadership. But what I'm also wanting to say is that we as women, we are not victims, and we need to take the space and hold the space with both women and men in building a society that we are comfortable with and that we would like to reflect the spirit and what our constitution in South Africa supports. And specifically in higher education, I think we all dream of a space where if I or Professor Vital go to a meeting, that we're not the only two women professors over there, and particularly black women professors. I do have to say that at UKZN, I'm not that lonely, and neither is Professor Vital that lonely, and I do that compared to where I used to be a professor at the University of Pretoria, and that's a whole nother story. The executive at UKZN has also been talking about doing a project on life histories, and I've been working with people in history to try to see how we could engage that project and take it further. And sitting here today, I think that there's the possibility that I'd like to explore with Professor Vital, Chair of Council, and other people over here, that we look at a book as a beginning to document women's life histories. There are a lot of books, but there are a lot of books in particular areas, but if I look at the stories that Ms. Mbete also spoke about, and even what they in this current discourse called living legends, there's an opportunity to talk to current leaders, current leaders in terms of their leadership journey. So I think from UKZN side and the Humanities side, we will look into that as a possibility. I thank you, and I would like to call Dr. Gopal over here to come and present the gifts to the panelists. It's over there, and thanks once again. That Dr. Gopal is the chairperson of one of the unions, and I assume and I know that she's the only female chairperson of the 3 unions. And you can see management and unions, we work comfortably together.